Hello and welcome to a review of Featherpunk Prime. If you spent your whole life waiting to be a pissed off robot flamingo with a giant arsenal of weapons that destroys everything in its path, this is finally your game. If you're like everybody else, this is the game you didn't realize you wanted. And I mean that honestly in the best possible way. In Featherpunk Prime, you play as a robot flamingo, working your way up 48 floors to save your friends. You'll do that by jumping, shooting, exploding your way through enemies and bosses, while trying not to get blown to flamingo robot bits. This game actually describes itself as a twin-stick shooter. I'm not sure I would actually call it that. I think I would call it either a side-scrolling shooter or maybe an action platform or something along those lines. Typically when I think of a twin-stick shooter, I think top-down. That may just be me, but that's typically what I think of. Regardless of how the game should be classified, watching even a few seconds of video and you have a pretty good idea of what this game is, how it plays, and where it's probably drawing inspiration from. For me, I got a lot of Contra vibes from it. That may be just me and the amount of time I spent with Contra. But for me, I felt that. I felt some Metroid. I even felt some Donkey Kong Country in there. Again, that could be totally baseless. That may not be their basis at all. But I got those vibes. With games like that in mind, one thing that's absolutely crucial to a good platformer or a good side-scrolling shooter are the controls. If the controls are terrible, you will have a terrible experience. If the controls are even mediocre, you probably won't have an enjoyable experience. So controls are really what makes or breaks these games in my opinion. Featherpunk Prime controls beautifully. The controls are tight and responsive. You may need to rebind a few keys or buttons. I know I was playing on a gamepad and I had to rebind the bumper buttons and the triggers. For me, the way they were set up initially just didn't feel right. But the one thing I will say is you can rebind keys on both the gamepad and the keyboard and mouse, which both work fine. I kind of felt like the gamepad was better for the platforming and the keyboard and mouse was kind of better for the shooting, and honestly it kind of goes back and forth on which one of those is more important. There are levels and bosses that the platforming is far more important. There are other bosses that I felt like the shooting was way more important, and if I was willing to switch, I would have actually done better. So it really depends on the situation. It depends on your personal preference, but the biggest thing I can say is that you can rebind those keys to whatever you want, which honestly there's a lot of bigger budget games that don't allow you to do that. So that's a very welcome feature. I will say it did take me a little bit to get used to the way the game controlled, but I think that was just, I haven't played a game like this in a while. I really haven't played a side-scrolling shooter in a bit. So I think it was just me, but by the 4th or 5th level or floor, which they're all pretty short, but on the 4th or 5th floor, I was pretty comfortable with the controls, and actually when I'm then, a little while after that, I made the switch on the triggers and the bumpers, and that made a world of difference. I really liked how it was set up after that. So anyway, look at controls, figure out what's comfortable for you, but overall this game controls wonderfully. As far as the story and the theme, to me it doesn't do much. It serves its purpose. It tells you why you're a flamingo shooting the hell out of everything, but it doesn't do much more than that. And I think that's probably the intent. A lot of times with these games, you really don't need much. You just need a reason to go shoot things. And this game gives you that without giving you much else. It does what it needs to do. As far as the game's visuals and art style, overall they're really good. I think some are better than others. I think the character models are really good. I really enjoy especially the main character's character model. I think the animations in there are great. All the visual animations, the enemies, really all of that stuff I really enjoyed. Some of the ground textures, the side textures, even some of the background textures, I didn't love them. I didn't hate them either. Overall though, really good. There are a few things that I didn't like, but a lot of this is going to come down to personal preference, and for me, graphics are not something I focus a whole lot on, but I think, like I said, especially the character models and some of the enemy models and animations, things like that, those are all really well done. So in addition to controls, the other really important thing is the game fun? It is an absolute blast. I really wasn't sure what to expect when I first started the game. I kind of thought that I was going to play a little bit of it and then probably do an impressions video, something like that. I didn't think I was going to finish it, and I honestly didn't think I was going to really love it. I didn't think I was going to want to play it all the way through, but that was not even close to the case. I played it through and then some. As I mentioned earlier, the controls are great, and I think that's one reason that I really enjoyed the game. There's also a good amount of enemies, a lot of diversity there, and a lot of diversity in the weapons as well. The weapons also have a lot of feedback to them. They have a really good feel overall. When you change to a different weapon, which there are quite a few of, when you change to a different weapon, each one feels different, each one feels unique. You'll definitely find favorites. I know I enjoyed the minigun, the bounce gun, something like that. That was also a lot of fun to play with. And then there's some more explosive weapons as you get deeper into the game that are also a lot of fun to play with. They have limited amounts of ammo, but they're great. In general, I felt like the game's difficulty was in a really good place without it ever feeling unfair or like the game was cheating or anything like that. So I really liked where the game was at as far as difficulty for the most part. I did feel like there were a few exceptions to that. One exception being the first boss, which feels a little out of tune with the rest of the game. Most of the other bosses I beat in about 2 or 3 tries. The first boss took me closer to 8, maybe a little more than that. I really don't remember for sure. Some of it was me still learning the controls. That was probably a good chunk of it. But I think a lot of it was the boss just being kind of out of tune with the rest of the game. And I'm not sure if that boss is just over-tuned or the others are a little under. But that boss really kicked my ass. I also felt like some of the levels could have actually used a little more challenge, but that was partially my playstyle. If you actually play the game probably the way it was really intended, and you're moving around a lot, and you're jumping, and you're doing a lot of movement, I think it'll probably provide a whole lot of challenge. However, you can play the game by being very cautious in a lot of situations. You can use things like the bounce gun and kind of just hide behind corners to take out enemies, or you can get out of the path of the bullets and kind of shoot enemies from a diagonal and things like that. And it does reduce a little bit of the challenge. I kind of wished maybe that there was some kind of a function in the game that kind of pushed you forward at a pace. You'd really have to be careful with it because the levels are procedurally generated, at least to an extent, so you could end up with a lot of stuff where you really can't get through it in a time limit. But I felt like there could have been something kind of pushing me forward to where I wasn't standing in place so much and being real cautious. That being said, there was a lot of stuff that still felt very challenging even when I was being cautious. So overall, difficulty of the game was pretty good. I do have a few other criticisms or things that I would have liked to have seen out of the game. For the most part, these are just things that I felt like would have made the game just a little bit better, and I would have loved to have seen it, or I'd love to see them in a future update. So the first big one are the boss battles. There are only 4 in the game. I really would have loved to have seen more because the boss battles in this game are outstanding. They are just really well done. Each one is varied, each one is unique, each one challenges you in a different way. So with those boss battles being so good, I would have loved to have had one every 3 floors or every at least 6 floors rather than basically every 12 floors. I felt like there were enough bosses for the number of floors there were. I just felt like this could have almost been a pure boss battle game, and I would have enjoyed that a lot too. So anyway, would have liked to have seen more bosses. As I kind of mentioned, the difficulty varied a little bit, and I really could have used a little more of a challenge on some of the floors, especially early on. I also felt like the game could have been structured a little differently as far as the saving goes. Currently, you can do 6 floors and then save, and then 6 floors and a boss, and that saves as well. If you die at any point during those floors or at the boss, you start back at the beginning of that 6th floor section and do that over again. I felt like it could have probably had an increase in difficulty, but a decrease in the number of floors you had to do. So let's say higher difficulty, but 3 floors. That actually, to me, I think would have felt a little better. I would have preferred to do less of the floors over again if I died on a boss or during a level or something like that. Repeating 3 floors I thought would have been a lot more manageable than 6. However, it's still enjoyable. You're accruing some currency as you go and as you repeat the levels, so you are getting stronger. I should have talked about that earlier, but basically you do get upgrades along the way. There's a whole upgrade section where you can get upgrades for your weapon power, your survivability, things like that, jumping. So you do get stronger along the way, so even when you die and you have to start over, you are still gaining something for that time for that playthrough. It's not experience, but you are getting that currency, and you are able to spend that on upgrades and things like that, so that you are getting stronger even when you are dying. And I think that is what helped me push through on that first boss. So overall, really great game. I had a lot of fun with it. I would strongly suggest this to anybody who really enjoys this style game. I think you'll really have a lot of fun with this. Even people that don't typically, I'd say give it a shot. It was actually a lot of fun. It was a big surprise for me. I believe I read that the game is going to be priced at $10, and at $10, it's an easy buy. Even $20, it's well worth picking up. More than that, maybe not, but I easily put 10 hours or more into the game, and I honestly will probably put some more time into it, and it was easily worth that $10 to $20 price. So if you can pick it up for around that price, I would totally pick this up. So anyway, that's my review for Featherpunk Prime. If you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a thumbs up, maybe subscribe. If you didn't, maybe give it a thumbs down. Either way, you can let me know in the comments below what you liked, what you didn't like, and I will see you next time.